Hey guys, so what kind of game would it be if there weren't any dungeons? So we're going to be looking at the first dungeon that you will encounter with Final Fantasy XIV, which is going to be the Sastasha dungeon. I think that's how you pronounce it. It is a dungeon available to you when you reach level 15 and has completed the story quests up until that point. Now I guess I'll just go over how Final Fantasy XIV dungeons work. Now the dungeons work as a 4-man team, as in you will be able to use either the duty finder or just by using the original or classic way of just simply shouting into the world and just finding party members. There will be slots for 4 people, including yourself. Now if you use duty finder, then they will slot you with a basically pre-made party built of 2 DPS, 1 healer, and 1 tank class. Now, if you don't want to fit those kind of classes or group makeup, then you will have to shout for a group and form it by yourself. And after you have comprised your group, whether you use the duty finder or you just shout it into the world, you will go ahead and queue up for the Sastasha dungeon. A critical thing to keep in mind is that everyone will have to have access to the dungeon itself, meaning that you will have to have completed the pre-requirements needed to gain access to it. If one person doesn't have access to the dungeon, then your group as a whole will not be able to gain entrance into the dungeon and complete it, obviously. So make sure you have that checked off, and you'll be able to find that in your duty finder log. So when you go into your duty finder, you'll actually be able to see whether you have access to it or not, because it'll say like in red marks if you don't have access to it. The unique thing about Final Fantasy XIV is that you are never going to out-level the content, because there's something called a level sync. And if you've already heard of what level syncing is, then, great. If this is your first video that you've ever watched from me or any kind of video for Final Fantasy, then I'll be more than happy to explain level syncing for you. Now, level syncing is basically when you queue into a dungeon or you queue into an instance or any kind of quest in this Final Fantasy game. You will automatically level sync down into the level that's appropriate for that content that you're queuing for or you're doing or anything like that. So it's great if you are playing with friends who have just started the game, but let's say that you are at max level 50, then you could still play the game with your friend and still do the same dungeons without weighing or being tired of the content, because you will still feel that same challenge, because even though your max level is 50, once you queue up for that level 15 dungeon, as in the Sastasha dungeon, you will automatically be level synced down into that appropriate level. Now, when you are level synced down or when you gain level, the max level that you could get for each dungeon that you queue up for is 2 levels above the level that they deem appropriate. So Sastasha, you gain access to that when you are level 15. Hence, the max cap level you could be for this dungeon will be level 17. So 2 levels above the level that they gain access for. So if you look at our party makeup right now, if you look at the pugilist, that is called Elkin Silvermoon, and the gladiator, which is Marcia Array. Oh goodness, I'm butchering these names. But yes, if you look at those 2 characters, they're level 17. However, beside their names up on the top left hand corner, if you see our group makeup right there, they're the 2 on the bottom. If you see next to their level, there's an orange, not really orange, gold, I would say, gold circle that kind of looks like a yin-yang sign, but there's really no dots in the middle. That sign lets you know that these players are being level synced down to the top level for this dungeon. So they clearly have a base level that is above this content. However, when they're queuing up for this content, they have been synced down so that they could play with the appropriate level. But it's different when you level sync down and when you are just physically level 17. So in the case of myself, Selrain, and Koshinto, which is the conjure. So our names are on the top two, but we're still level 17, but we still don't have that circular icon next to our levels. That's because we're physically level 17, but let's say I level in here or Koshinto levels in here up to level 18, then that's when we should get that orange icon because we've been synced down one level to level 17. So I hope that makes some sense and lets you understand how syncing works. So this basically is implemented for any kind of dungeon that you do, whether it be for the level 15 dungeon or the level 22 dungeon, 23 dungeon, or whatever like that. I mean, I don't think there's a level 23 dungeon, but yeah. But you get my point. It'll do that for anything, meaning that it'll do that for even open world events. It'll actually flash in front of your screen saying that you are too high for this level of open world event, and they'll ask you to sync down if you want to get credit for it. Now you could choose not to sync down, but then keep in mind that you're just doing it just to do it, and there will be no rewards given to you at the end. So I could definitely see how level syncing could be such a great thing for this game, but at the same time, I could definitely understand and sympathize with those people that feel like it's bothersome or if they have any ill feelings towards the mechanic, because at the same time of the good things, the benefits of level syncing would be that you never get tired of the content. It's always going to be challenging for you because you're actually synced down to that physical level. And you'll still be able to play with friends and not get tired of it because, you know, you'll still be around the same level, so there won't be any carrying, I guess you can say, ever, because you won't necessarily be carrying because you're not going to be any stronger. You'll be synced down to that attack level or that damage level, so you're never going to be at a max level trying to one-shot a level 5 mob when you're in a level 5 dungeon, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I guess the negative points would be that people would be like, well, I gain level up to level 50 and I want to be able to one-shot a mob. Unfortunately, that won't be possible in this game unless you're just hitting a random mob outside in the open world and not doing an event. If you do an event, then you should be level synced down unless, like I said, you don't want to get credit for it. If you do want credit for it, you'll be synced down and it'll be harder for you. Not hard, but I guess you could say a little bit challenging. It won't be a one-shot kill. The only time you'll be able to one-shot anything is that if you hit like a level 1 mob, like one of those beginning mobs when you have to kill, like they're like, oh, kill 5 bunnies, and the bunnies are level like 1 when you start the game the first time. So you could one-shot those bunnies, but besides that, and besides just open map mobs, you will probably always have to use that level sync. Probably the most important thing to remember about level syncing is that level syncing isn't just your level. Isn't just like level syncing down to level 17 and you're like, okay, well, I can still use all of my skills. Level syncing syncs down your HP, your MP, your TP, your skills that you have acquired. So let's say you learned an awesome skill and you learned it at level 20. Best believe, once you level sync down and you're in Sastasha, which is level 17, you will not be able to use that level 20 skill. So keep in mind when you enter these dungeons, be conscious of the level that you're going into and the skills that you take with you, because you don't want to be in a dungeon having skills that are all level 50 and not being able to use any of them. So, very, very important thing to note. Alright, so we'll just go into the dungeon now. I'm pretty sure you've watched a lot of the content already while I was talking about level syncing, but this is the part where it gets a little bit more interesting anyways. All the mobs beforehand are just trash mobs that you just have to work through as a team. And keep in mind to keep your eyes peeled for treasure coffers along the way so that you could possibly pick up on some good loot. The first kind of mini boss that you encounter is from talking to the 3 coral variations and using the coral trigger. Once you activate that trigger, you will meet this boss called Chopper. It's a level 15. Now, good thing to know about any kind of group instance that you do is that there is such a thing called limit breaks. And if you look on the top left-hand screen, you will see that limit break bar filling up. When you are just out in the open inside the dungeon, queued up as a 4 party, you will only get 1 bar. But at the end of the dungeon itself, when you are at the last boss, they will give you the opportunity of getting another bar, an additional bar. And I'll show you that once we get that second bar up. But yeah, so while you kill mobs or anything like that, then you will get these limit breakers filling up. Now I could go a little bit more into limit breakers, but I think I'll save that for a separate video because there's going to be a lot more dungeon videos coming along where of course you're going to have a limit breaker, and I don't want to keep on repeating what the limit breakers are about. So I think I'll just make a separate video on that. So if you want to know more about that, just keep an eye out for that video. So after you defeat that mini boss, you'll be awarded with a treasure coffer. The amount, I guess, depends on the mini boss or the type of dungeon that you do. And after you defeat that mini boss and open up that treasure coffer, most of the times it should be an item. And you could need, greed, or pass on the item depending on if it fits your role or whatever rule your group decides to go with. And then after you loot or roll on the item or pass or greed, then you can move on to continuing through the dungeon. So I guess I'll just talk about party makeup. So party makeup is important because you definitely need your damage dealers, you need a tank to keep aggro on everything, and you also need a healer to focus down on healing. Now, it's very important that each role does and performs adequately, or exceptionally is what we want to strive for, of course, but adequately enough to do the job so that your group could complete or conquer the quest. So you want the tank to usually go in first. If not, then DPX could do so. But you want the tank to gain aggro on all the mobs so they don't kill off your DPS or kill off your healer, especially your healer. So you want to always protect your healer as much as you can, because in this game, healing generates so much aggro, or in this game they call it enmity. I know that someone got on my case about calling it enmity. But I can't help it. I keep on trying to put an E in there, but okay, enmity. Yeah, but regardless, it's called aggro or hate or whatever you want to call it. So basically, full circle, just keep in mind and be conscious of where the mobs are. Definitely try to keep them off of the conjurer so that they could continue healing. Now, our limit breaker bar is almost full. If you see right there, I think it's about to be full right here, and you could definitely use it on these mini bosses because it takes a while to get to the end room anyways. So it's now full, and now if you see here, Miss Elkin Silvermoon is going to be using the limit breaker now. She's summoning it, and there it unleashes. So it takes down a good amount of life, which is what we needed for this mini boss, because we weren't having any trouble with healings, or we weren't having any trouble with the tank taking on too much damage where he or she felt like the need to get a defense buff on them. At this point in time, the best limit breaker to use was a limit breaker that would take down much of the boss's life. And there are 2 types of DPS limit breakers. There is one that is single target, which Miss Elkin Silvermoon, being a pugilist, is a single target limit breaking class, besides another class such as a thaumaturg, who has the limit breaking ability of an AoE type of damage dealing limit breaker rather than a single target limit breaker. And since at the time, with Captain Madison just being one opponent, it was more better that we actually had a single target limit breaker rather than an AoE. But there are other instances where you have more than one opponent in the mini boss room or in the last room, dungeon room, where you actually rather might prefer a AoE type of limit breaker rather than a single target. But it also depends on what your group is made out of. So right now we actually do not have a thaumaturg, so we don't even have the option for an AoE limit breaker because Me, myself, Selrain being a pugilist, and the other DPS being a pugilist as well. The only option we have is for a single target limit break anyways. So yeah, Captain Madison is actually one of the mini bosses that kind of goes and carries over into the last dungeon room. So he's going to continually try to run away, which is quite annoying, but you know, it's part of the storyline. So, and you still get rewarded at the end for it. So that's great. Now the purpose of this room is that you are actually trying to get a key. So we actually got the captain quarters key. You need to collect it. And then make your way over into the captain quarters by going through the Wave Rider gates. And also these groups of mobs, they always come in a group of like 2-3 at a time, and they are linked together. So there's really no way to pull just one, because after a certain level, they are linked together. And if you target one of these mobs, a small little yellow light will beam from that going to a different mob. And it'll let you know how they're linked together. So if they're linked to more than one, two beams will come out. And it'll actually show you how they'll link together. So it's actually quite neat to see, because you know, hey, if I hit this one mob, it's going to link to another person. And you know that you're going to get two rather than one. And there you go. You just need to defeat those trash mobs, and then you could use the key to simply open the captain's quarters. And at that time, you will meet your next mini boss, named the Shadowtail Reaver. Now here's where you could decide to, hey, we have a limit breaker up. You could decide to use the limit breaker, or maybe take the chance, or if you've already run this dungeon already and you know how you're close to the end, you could save that limit breaker. I'm so sorry, but life of a YouTuber and a video recorder, yeah, my computer kind of gave out on me and I lost memory, hence, yeah. So I got it back on track, and so what happened was that you just simply defeat the mini boss. There's really no kind of magic to it. You could either use your limit breaker or not. We decided to apparently use our limit breaker, since on top our bar is no longer full. After you defeat that mini boss, you will be rewarded with another treasure coffer with another piece of gear that you can loot on, and then you'll proceed into this room. Now there is a lot of mobs here, trash mobs. You could decide to just simply go around and kill all of them if you wish and your party wishes, just to build up your limit breaker bar, and also with, gain additional experience points and money. But if not, if that's not your thing, you could just simply hug the wall and kill the ones that are along the wall and go into the last boss room. And there we go. Once you cross the purple line, basically the purple line kind of means like, hey, you're about to enter a place or a dungeon that will be sealed off after a certain period of time. So you might want to keep a conscious eye out on those lines. Ferocious sea creatures. So yeah. Once you all go into this dungeon, now there is a little, not dungeon, but like this room, there is a little bit of mechanics behind this rooms, which I'll go into. So you see those things called unnatural ripples. So what could be so unnatural about them? We shall see. I'm just being silly at this point. But yeah, you engage the boss. Obviously, the tank would try to engage first. At that time, there is a limit breaker that you could use. I decided to use the limit breaker because I really wanted to show you guys in my perspective how that looks, because it's a little hard for me to capture someone else using it unless there is a clear view in front, which in this game is kind of hard because everyone moves around because it's so positional based. So yeah, at that time, a certain period, there'll be like, oh, unnatural ripples and stuff, and then you have to go and block them off. If you don't, then obviously there will be ads coming out at that point. So you see unnatural ripples and they're like coming out like that. You want to try to target them if it's trying to target them. Apparently it didn't work. So if you don't target them, then a mob will come out like this. And it's bad because if your tank is preoccupied with the boss and the tank is not doing any hate damage as he was or should be, then all those mobs will go over to the conjurer just naturally because the conjurer is giving off AoE heals. So it's automatically going to go to the conjurer, which is bad because then your conjurer is going to be dead. So definitely if you're playing or thinking of playing a tanking class, that it's definitely crucial for you to know that, hey, when you're fighting a boss, a single target boss, and there's ads forming around, that's really good to keep an eye out for when additional ads pop up so that your conjurer isn't bombarded with additional ads. Did I say ads enough? So yeah, you go to the ripples, and if you don't do it in time, then an ad will come out. The targeting system with these game controllers, I would say that they're in a way okay, mediocre, but at the same time it is so questionable about how they sift through the targets. It's a little bit more complicated. And I guess since it is the last boss room here, we see that there is 2 bars. Now you could simply wait to build up the 2 bars before you use them, or you could simply just use them one at a time. It really depends on what your group wants or feels like they need. So after the boss is basically decommissioned, or puffs into a smoke of purple, you're basically done. Your duty complete right there. And at that time, you should see another treasure coffer that appears with possible good gear. It is random, and you'll be able to loot, greed, or pass on that, whatever you want. And you should be just going out that exit right there, which looks like an ethereal kind of thing. So that's basically it. I hope my information on how level syncing works, and just to take a look at the first dungeon, which is the Sastasha dungeon, was informative and, just nice to see if you're looking into getting into Final Fantasy XIV, or if, I don't know, you had some difficulty with this dungeon. I hope it helped you out, guys. It was a great fun for me to try this out. I'm really, really, really having such a great time with this game, and I hope you guys do too. Keep a lookout for more additional videos, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.